This happened last fall when I was staying in a small town in northern Pennsylvania for work. I do commercial refrigeration repair, and at the time, I was driving to different grocery stores and restaurants in smaller towns because our company was short on people. The town I was sent to was the kind of place where everything shut down early, and there were more empty buildings than open ones. I was supposed to be there for 3 nights while I worked on the walk-in freezers at an older family-owned supermarket. My company booked me a motel on the edge of town because it was the only place nearby with any vacancy. I got there a little after 7 in the evening on a Thursday. The motel was one of those single-floor places where all the room doors faced directly out into the parking lot. It had maybe 12 rooms total, and there were only 4 or 5 cars parked in the lot when I arrived. The office smelled like old, stale coffee mixed with heavy bleach. The woman working behind the front desk was probably in her late 60s. She was friendly enough, but there was something incredibly distracted about her. While I was checking in and filling out the paperwork, she kept glancing past me, looking right through the front window toward the parking lot. When she finally handed me the metal room key, she looked me in the eye and told me that if anyone knocked on my door at night, I should not answer it under any circumstances, unless it was her or the motel owner. She also said if I heard anything weird outside my door, I should just call the office directly and not get involved. She said it in a very casual, flat voice, as if it was just normal, everyday advice, but it immediately caught me off guard. I asked her if she was warning me because the area was particularly bad or dangerous. She just shrugged and said there were some drifters around the area sometimes, and they liked to ask the guests for money. I remember thinking it was a very strange and unsettling thing to say to someone who had just arrived in town, but I was exhausted from the long drive and didn't really care to press her further. My room was near the far end of the building, the second to last door. Inside, the room was clean enough, but it was incredibly old. I noticed cigarette burns melted into the top of the dresser, and the carpet was covered in dark, unidentifiable spots. I brought my duffel bag in, grabbed some fast food at the gas station down the road, and came back to the room around 8. While I was walking from my truck to my door, I noticed a man sitting inside an older, dark green pickup truck parked just 2 spaces away from mine. The truck was running, but the headlights were completely turned off. I could not see his face clearly because of how dark the parking lot was, but I remember noticing that he did not look at me the way a normal person would when someone walks past their vehicle. He did not turn his head or acknowledge me at all. He just sat perfectly still, with both of his hands gripped tightly onto the steering wheel, staring straight ahead. I assumed he was just waiting for someone to come out of one of the other rooms. I went inside my room, locked the door, and spent the next couple of hours eating my food and watching random videos on my phone. Around 10:30, I took a quick shower and got into bed. Maybe 20 minutes after that, I heard the sound of footsteps on the concrete walkway outside my room. That did not bother me at first because I knew there were other people staying at the motel. But then the footsteps stopped right outside my door. I waited, expecting to hear someone unlock the door next to mine or knock on it, but nothing happened. After about 15 seconds of complete silence, the footsteps finally moved on. But a minute later, I heard them again, slowly coming back in the other direction. Once again, they stopped directly outside my door. Still, there was no knock, just heavy, quiet breathing and complete silence on the other side of the wood, and then the footsteps slowly walked away again. I got out of bed and looked through the peephole, but the walkway was empty. I figured it was probably just someone who was drunk or confused about which room was theirs. A little after 11, I was half asleep when a sudden, sharp knock came at the door. I stayed completely still in bed and waited. Then the person knocked again, in the exact same sharp, rhythmic way. I got up as quietly as I could and looked through the peephole a second time. There was absolutely nobody there. That made my stomach drop a little. The parking lot lights were dim, but the walkway in front of the rooms was completely illuminated, and there was no one in sight. I stood there in the dark for a long time, then locked the deadbolt again, even though I knew it was already locked. I was about to get back into bed when I noticed that the heavy curtain near the window had shifted slightly. It was not open enough for someone to see directly inside, but it was open just enough to make me realize that if someone stood at a certain angle outside, they might be able to peer in. I carefully pulled it completely shut and turned off the small bedside lamp. I stayed awake for another half hour, just sitting on the edge of the bed and listening. Right around midnight, I heard a very distinct sound. It sounded like metal lightly scraping against metal right near the door lock. I got up, stepping as quietly as I could across the cold carpet, and approached the door. For the third time, I looked through the peephole. This time, I actually saw movement. Somebody was crouched down very low, almost completely underneath the view of the peephole. I could only see the top of a dark baseball cap and one of their shoulders. I do not know how long I stood there frozen, but it could not have been more than 5 seconds before the person suddenly stood up and moved away. I heard their footsteps going very fast toward the far end of the building. I immediately picked up the room phone and called the front office. The woman who answered sounded annoyed at first, but as soon as I told her that someone was crouched down right outside my door, trying to do something to the lock, she went completely silent. She asked me if I had opened the door, and I told her absolutely not. She told me to stay inside and said the motel owner was going to go outside to check. About 2 minutes later, I saw headlights sweep across the closed curtains. Someone drove slowly through the parking lot and then left. The office called me back a minute later and said that nobody was out there now, and it was probably just some local kids messing around. I asked if I should call the police, and she said it probably would not do any good unless the person actually came back. I barely slept at all after that. Every tiny creak of the building woke me up. At some point around 3 in the morning, I must have passed out from pure exhaustion, but I woke up abruptly at 5:15 to the loud, familiar sound of my truck door opening alarm. I jumped out of bed and rushed to the window, peering out without moving the curtain more than a tiny fraction of an inch. There was a man standing right at the driver's side of my truck with the door wide open. He was tall, wearing a dark jacket and a dark hat. I could not see his face because his back was turned to me. But then he suddenly stopped what he was doing and looked straight toward my room window as if he knew exactly where I was and that I was watching him. He calmly shut the truck door and walked off quickly toward the dark road behind the motel. This time I did not call the office. I dialed 911. The police arrived about 15 minutes later. They took a detailed report and checked my truck, but they did not find anything missing because I never leave any valuable tools or items inside my vehicle overnight. One of the officers asked me if I was absolutely sure that I had locked the truck doors the night before, which made me feel like they did not really believe me, but I knew for a fact that I had locked it. The older officer on the scene seemed much more interested when I told him about the repeated knocking and the person crouching outside my door in the middle of the night. He went to the office and asked the motel owner if they had any security cameras. The owner said they did, but there was only one camera inside the office, and one pointing directly at the front entrance. There was nothing covering my side of the parking lot at all. Before the officers left, the older pulled me aside and told me that if anything else happened, I should not open my door for any reason, and that I should leave the motel as soon as I could in the morning. I asked him if he thought this was just a random incident, and he told me it probably was, but his expression did not match his words at all. He looked genuinely worried. I had to work that day, and since I was already there, I decided to stay. I figured I was probably just overreacting and letting my imagination run wild. During the daytime, everything felt completely normal. I worked at the supermarket from 7 in the morning until almost 6 in the evening. By the time I got back to the motel, it was already dark outside. I made sure to park my truck directly under the brightest light in the parking lot, and I carried all of my heavy tools inside the room at once, so I would not have to go back out to the truck for anything. The woman at the front desk saw me walking in and asked if I was doing okay. I told her honestly that I had not slept a wink the night before. She hesitated for a second, looking down at her desk, and then asked if I wanted her to move me to room 2, which was right next to the office. I asked her why she had not offered that to me the night before. She said she had not thought it was necessary at the time. Then she added something that I have thought about a lot since that night. She said that it usually does not happen 2 nights in a row. I asked her what she meant by that, and she immediately got defensive and acted as though she had misspeaking. She just said that the drifters in the area normally move on quickly. That made me feel even more uneasy than I already was. I seriously considered packing up my bags and driving an hour away to find another hotel, but I was absolutely exhausted, filthy from working on the freezers all day, and I told myself that I could survive just one more night and leave first thing in the morning. Around 8 in the evening, I went out to grab some food and brought it back to my room. While I was sitting there eating, I heard the sound of a vehicle driving very slowly through the gravel lot. I peered through the crack in the curtain and saw the exact same dark green pickup truck from the night before. It drove slowly past my door, turned around near the main road, and parked at the very far end of the parking lot with its headlights turned completely off. I could not see who was sitting inside. I called the front office immediately and told them about the truck. The motel owner answered this time, not the woman. He sounded very irritated with me and told me that if the truck was not blocking my vehicle in or damaging any of his property, there was not really anything he could do about it. I asked him if he knew who owned the truck, and he just sighed and said people come and go all the time. I sat on the edge of the bed for about an hour, checking the window every few minutes. The truck never moved. Eventually, I turned off the television and the lights, trying to fall asleep with all of my clothes and boots still on. Sometime after 11, I heard the sound of footsteps walking outside again. They were very slow, incredibly deliberate steps. Then, a soft light tap came against the window, not the door. I stayed completely still in the bed, barely breathing. Then another tap came, this time much closer to the center of the glass pane. And then I heard the sound of a fingernail, or some kind of sharp tool dragging slowly down the window glass. I could hear it so clearly in the silence of the room. I had never felt a deep, primal fear like that in my entire life, because I knew that whoever was doing that was standing only inches away from where my head was resting, and they knew exactly where I was in the dark, pretending to be asleep. I reached out and grabbed my phone, immediately starting to dial 911. But before I could hit the call button, I heard a sudden rattle from the bathroom. It was the tiny, frosted glass window located high up above the toilet. And then I heard something even worse. I heard the distinct sound of the door to the room next to mine opening. It sounded like an actual key or a professional lock-picking tool working the mechanism, followed by the heavy creak of the door swinging open. The room next to mine had been completely empty when I checked in. I knew that for a fact, because I had looked through the crack in my curtains the night before, and never saw a single car parked there or any lights turned on. I got out of bed, creeping as silently as a ghost, and crouched down near the shared drywall that connected our two rooms. I could hear distinct movement next door. It was not the heavy, casual footsteps of a normal guest checking into a room. It was the sound of someone trying their absolute best not to make a single sound. I quickly finished dialing 911 on my phone and whispered everything that was happening to the dispatcher as quietly as I possibly could. The dispatcher told me to stay on the line and that officers were already on their way. While I was speaking to her, I heard one incredibly hard hit against the shared wall right behind my bed's headboard, as if someone was testing the strength of the wall. Then I heard another hit lower down, and then absolute silence. I was straining my ears so hard to listen that the only things I could hear were my own shallow breathing and the heavy pounding of my heartbeat. Then I heard the bathroom window in my room start to move. It was not rattling this time. It was being slowly pushed open from the outside, inch by inch. I ran into the bathroom, threw my entire body weight against the frosted window, and shoved it completely closed with both of my hands. I felt someone on the very other side push back hard against me once. It was not an incredibly powerful push, but it was absolutely enough for me to feel the real physical resistance of another human being. I quickly flipped the tiny lock, even though the plastic latch looked flimsy as hell, and backed away into the main room. The dispatcher's voice whispered through my phone speaker, telling me that the officers were only 2 minutes away. But then, I heard movement right outside my front door again. It sounded like there was more than one person out there now. Then the soft, rhythmic knocks started on the wood again. I did not move. I grabbed the heavy wooden chair from the corner of the room and jammed the top of it tightly under the door handle, hoping it would buy me some time, even though I knew a determined person could easily break through. The police cars finally arrived about a minute later, though it felt like 10 years to me. As soon as the bright headlights swept across the curtains, I heard the sound of people running. It was at least 2 distinct sets of footsteps sprinting away into the darkness. When the officers investigated, they found that the screen on my bathroom window had been completely removed and was lying in the bushes nearby. They also discovered fresh, deep pry marks on my truck door and on the door lock of the empty room next to mine. But what I did not find out until much later was the absolute worst part of the entire ordeal. The older officer who had responded to my call that morning came back into my room and asked to speak with me privately. He asked me if I had anyone who was extremely angry with me, or if I had posted anything online mentioning that I was staying at this specific motel. I told him absolutely not, that I was just a regular guy here for a quick work trip. Then, the officer told me that they had actually seen that green pickup truck before. According to their records, there had been 2 other very similar incidents in the previous 6 months involving men who were staying alone at that exact same motel for out-of-town work. In both of those cases, someone had tried getting into their work vehicles during the middle of the night. One of the men said he had heard people whispering outside his room, but had packed up and left before reporting anything else to the police. The other victim had actually woken up in the middle of the night to find his motel room door cracked wide open, even though he swore he had locked and chained it before going to sleep. Nothing had been stolen in either of those cases. The officer explained that they believed a coordinated group of people was targetedly following out-of-town men from local bars or construction work sites, waiting until they were completely isolated in this motel, and then attempting to break into their rooms. He never explicitly said what he believed their ultimate end goal was, but he did not need to. I packed my bags as fast as I could while 2 armed officers stood guard outside my door. Right before I walked out, I decided to check under the bed to make sure I had not dropped anything. I normally never do that at motels, but I had dropped my phone charger and it had rolled all the way under. When I reached down, I noticed a small, folded piece of paper shoved almost completely against the wall. I pulled it out. It was a small square torn out of a local newspaper. On the back of the paper, someone had written my room number and my truck's exact license plate number in thick, black pen. That meant whoever was doing this had not just chosen my room at random that night. They had been watching me, tracking me, and writing down my information long before they ever made their move. I left that motel before 1 o'clock in the morning and drove the long, dark 2 hours back to my house. Even though I still had 1 more day of work scheduled at the supermarket, my company ended up sending a completely different technician the following week, and I found out later that they booked him a room in an entirely different town. Besides sharing this story now, I have tried my absolute best to put this entire terrifying experience behind me. This next story began in October of 2025. I was single at the time and decided to download Tinder just to see if I could find a partner or someone interesting to talk to. After swiping through a few profiles, I got a match. "Killian liked you back," it said. I smiled and opened the conversation with a simple message asking him what was up. He responded quickly and we started talking all day, every single day. He told me that he was in the military, stationed at a base not too far away from where I lived. He was charming at first, but after a few weeks of constant talking, his behavior shifted. He started to become incredibly possessive over me. He would say things like, "You are mine, and if I cannot have you, no one can." He also threatened that if I ever blocked or unfriended him on any app, he would find me and kill me. We had never even gone out on a date, and we had never met in person. One day in December, without warning, he suddenly unfriended me on Snapchat. I felt a massive wave of relief. I moved on and kept living my life until a few days ago when he suddenly added me again. Remembering the terrifying threats, I decided to add him back so that I would not anger him. He immediately sent me a message saying that he had been thinking about my beautiful smile for 8 weeks, and that he kept thinking about what we could be if he had not let his dark thoughts win. I did not want to piss him off, so I just responded by saying that it was cute. From that moment on, we started talking again, but I was responding almost entirely out of pure fear. He acted like an extremely possessive boyfriend, always asking where I was and who I was with, and demanding that I turn on my Snapchat map so he could track my location. On Thursday of last week, I was driving around with my friend until about 1 o'clock in the morning. I asked him if he could drop me off at my house, which he did. I walked up the dark alleyway toward my home. Keep in mind, I had never given Killian my address. I saw a man standing in the dark alleyway, but did not think much of it until he called my name. I did not know who he was, so I asked who was asking. Then he stepped into the light, and I saw his face. I felt my heart skip a beat and began shaking uncontrollably. Before I could run, he grabbed my neck with his hand and slammed my head hard into the brick wall. He stood there pinning me, studying my face, and demanding to know who I was with and why I was out so late. He kept choking me so hard that I had literal tears in my eyes and was gasping for air. I genuinely thought he was going to kill me. He choked me harder until he suddenly threw me to the ground head first. I whimpered from the intense pain as he let go of my throat. I looked into his eyes and saw absolutely nothing. There was no emotion there. All of a sudden, he sat on top of me and slapped me hard across the face. Then he started choking me again. This time I was absolutely sure he was going to kill me. I looked up at the black sky, thinking about my deceased dog, and even started smiling as I felt myself about to pass out. But then he suddenly let go of my throat. He stood up and said he had to go, because the last bus of the night was leaving in 3 minutes. He ran away while I lay on the cold, wet ground, trying to catch my breath. I was in complete shock. I decided to call my best friend and try to tell him what happened, but I could not talk because my vocal cords had been choked so badly. He only heard strange noises and said he was on his way. When I got to his house, I fell asleep on the couch within 3 minutes because I was exhausted. While I was sleeping, my friend called the police. The next day, he drove me to the station to give my statement. After I had been questioned, the police decided my life was in too much danger to let me go without protection. They gave me a tracking device with buttons that would alert them of my location. 3 days ago, I was followed by a friend of Killian. If the plan had not been for me to be picked up by a friend nearby, I do not think I would be here today. The police told me Killian's intention was to kill me, so if he had his own car, or if there had been a later bus, I would probably be dead. Every time I leave the house, I fear he is watching. One day, I might not see him coming, and I might not trigger the alarm fast enough. I am not safe, and I wanted to share this story in case I end up getting killed. Be careful, everyone. My name is Mike, and this happened last October when I decided to take a solo camping trip in the Smoky Mountains. I was feeling incredibly burnt out from work and just wanted a couple of quiet days away from everything. A couple of hours before reaching the park, I stopped at a small roadside diner because I was getting hungry. While I was eating, a man sitting a few stools down kept glancing in my direction. At one point, he asked where I was headed, and I told him I was going camping up in the mountains. He just nodded slowly and told me to be careful out there, saying it gets real quiet out there at night. I paid my bill and drove to a dirt pull-off near a remote trailhead. I grabbed my gear and hiked in, setting up my tent just as the light was fading. I got a small campfire going, but after half an hour, I heard footsteps on the leaves. I saw a man standing 40 feet away in the trees. He stepped closer and asked if I was out there alone. I panicked and lied, telling him my friends were meeting me soon. He nodded and walked back into the dark, but stopped at the edge of the trees to watch me for several minutes before vanishing. I went into my tent, but an hour later, I heard footsteps circling my campsite. They stopped right outside, and I heard a man exhaling a slow breath right through the fabric. This went on for hours. Sometimes the steps faded, then returned. It felt like more than one person was out there. At sunrise, I packed my bags as fast as I could. When I stepped out of the tent, I heard multiple sets of footsteps running off into the woods. I ran to my car, locked the doors, and fell asleep from pure exhaustion. When I woke up, I walked back to the site to retrieve the gear I had left behind in my rush. When I got there, my tent, sleeping bag, and cooking supplies were completely gone. Only the black ashes of my fire remained. Someone had taken every single thing. I ran back to my car and drove straight home. I have never gone camping alone since then, and I still lie awake at night wondering who was watching me from the shadows of those trees, and what they would have done if I had not left. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you thought of today's episode in the comments. And remember, we have a whole playlist of true crime episodes ready for you to binge right now. Until next time, see ya.